Outlaw Rituals. Well, welcome back, viewers. It's James Com, the guy on the bike, bringing you another half-assed episode. And today we're up in northern Williamsburg. We're going to run in here to the BOILER. We're going to look at an exhibition by David Brody titled Ecstasies. Well, we're going to go in and look at this video and installation that David has created. Well, right off the bat, we've got it's like a giant bubble wrap curtain that goes around the viewing area, and more rolls of bubble wrap for people to sit on. And quite an extensive sound system. Well, so we're going to talk to the artist a little bit here, David Brody. 8 Ecstasies. Tell us about the title first.
Ecstasy sort of comes from much of thinking about Baroque art, about the way that Baroque art in particular brought the sensual and the sacred together. It's my favorite art period.
Was that a biblical quote at the beginning of the animated film? Is that?
It's a quote from Saint Teresa of Avila.
Okay.
1500s. But Bernini's most famous and greatest, most Baroque sculpture is a monument to her, and he used that passage as sort of the basis for
the inspiration for the sculpture of her in ecstasy.
In ecstasy. So I began by animating to internet pornography because I wanted a narrative and a climax.
Internet pornography.
And that was
slightly more widely seen than the gospel.
At this point, perhaps. I wanted to contrast hard-edged animation with something that was the complete opposite. As I said, I wanted to create a kind of instant narrative structure. I took that, and once I started working with that, that's where I began to think about Saint Teresa, because that Brody sculpture has her essentially having a spiritual orgasm, and it comes out of her own writing. So that era between the 1500s and 1600s, which is the greatest era of art, is also the era when those two things seem to have been unified and not taken in different directions than they are now.
Tell us a little bit about your process now. What kind of a program are you using to do this on video?
It's a 3D animation software, except that I'm really using it in a 2D fashion because I wanted to make a moving drawing. It's my ambition to make moving drawings. And I already had a drawing practice that was taking place in isometric space.
Yes, a lot of us are familiar with your isometric drawings for years now.
Yeah, and then I used that vocabulary and brought it into a 3D context. But they're actually flat planes and lines morphing in a very, very particular way that I can control absolutely, and control the color and placement. And once I constructed this hybrid 2D, 3D apparatus, I was able to manipulate it like a set of interlocking knuckles and keyframe it in any way that I wanted.
Now, how long did you actually work on the animation?
Well, the whole process. Excuse me. The whole process took, I probably started the film 5 years ago, but I wasn't working on it constantly, obviously. Once I got into this 1 minute animation, to the internet pornography, I had this idea of sending it to my friend Zig Gron, who's a composer, to score it, and I asked him to make a set of variations. So
the animation came before the soundtrack, or?
In part, it's a layered back and forth. But
okay.
I gave him the original pornographic sound and the original animation, and asked him to preserve that rhythmic structure in his variations. And I asked him to take the variations from the profane to the sacred, if possible. But I didn't know what I was going to get back. What I got back was this epic filmic narrative, and I decided that rather than simply loop the animation, which had been my original intention, and let the music do all of the work, I would respond to it with tweaks of color and camera movement and other animation changes. So I spent about a year doing that, got back to him with that version, and then we went back and forth for another half year or so, changing the beginning and the ending. The theatricality of going to a movie where the lights go down and you get the previews, and then the previews are over, and then the feature starts, and that kind of your blood starts to raise. You're in for a ride. I wanted that feeling. So because there's so many videos you just looped in there.
Yeah, and I think the soundtrack is very theatrical, very cinematic. I was going to ask you also about how does this relate to your painting practice? As I remember your last show of paintings, a lot of it was just earth tones and browns and dark colors, but this is really, you juiced up the colors and beautiful colors.
It has effect. I spent a year just animating color, basically. Thinking of color as 3 quantities, and what happens if you change this quantity over time against this quantity over time. And it was like doing the interaction, Albert's interaction of color.
Sure.
And I was doing my own little trial and error.
But did you say you started out as a filmmaker? And
I've been working with animation since the 80s, but I was already doing painting by then as well. But to answer your question, I've been painting since I finished that process, that interaction of colors process, and colors have changed a lot.
So you've come out of the earth tones and started to juice things up.
I really did learn something, yeah, I did.
Okay, well,
You'll
David.
See, I'm showing some paintings at Valentine next year.
Oh, cool. I'll be there.
Valentine in Ritual. So
8 Ecstasies. David Brody at the Boiler. This is closing day, right?
yes.
Okay, I'm glad I caught it.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. As always, thank you, Kate.